Just from Mortimer reporting there. Let's bring in Sven Biscop, director of the Europe in the World program. Hello to you, Sven. Vladimir Putin, not the only absence there. It also seems like Europe left on the sidelines.
Well, Trump has said from the beginning that he does not want to involve the European Union or European states in the talks. So in a way, it's not a surprise. But actually, in fact, we have an impact on those negotiations or seeming negotiations, because we have also taken a firm position through the EU, through the coalition of the willing. We have said we will continue the accession process of Ukraine to join the EU. We will maintain our sanctions against Russia. We will continue to arm Ukraine even after a potential agreement, so there will be no demilitarization. And if there is a ceasefire, we will deploy European troops to Ukraine. Four facts that Trump does not control, cannot negotiate away in favor of Putin, and so we do have an impact.
And what if Washington is at odds with these European positions and Zelensky ends up perhaps making some of the concessions that would be against European interests?
We, of course, consult closely with Ukraine. That's precisely the strength also of the European position. And that is, I think, what enables Zelensky some marge de manœuvre to act knowing that he is still backed at least by his European allies.
Well, we've seen these meetings, the coalition of the willing, taking place in several European cities. Might they need to move somewhere else, perhaps cross the Atlantic and try to get the Trump administration to listen to what they're saying?
This is what, for example, President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer have done. The point is the Americans themselves have asked for European troops to be deployed, but then they refuse to guarantee their security if that would lead to a war with Russia. Of course, imagine that this scenario happens. There's a ceasefire, European troops, all from NATO countries, are shot at by Russia, and the United States stays out of it. That day, the US de facto leaves NATO. So whether the Americans wanted or not, NATO is involved, but it would be much better for the strength of the coalition, the credibility of the security guarantee that they want to offer to Ukraine, if Trump would say it very explicitly.
Yeah, and what do you make of these talks in Istanbul? Vladimir Putin chooses the place, he chooses the date. There's anticipation, the first talks in 3 years between Ukraine and Russia, but then he doesn't show up. It feels anticlimactic, and it feels like either, in the best case scenario, he's buying time. In the worst case scenario, he's manipulating negotiators.
Indeed. I mean, I think Zelensky played it well by going, so he can clearly demonstrate that he's not to fault if this doesn't result in anything. And I guess we can only conclude that indeed Putin is not yet ready to negotiate because, as your correspondent said, militarily he thinks he is winning at a tremendous cost though. So I don't exclude that at some point Russia might still seek at least a temporary agreement depending on what Trump is willing to offer to Putin. The risk is, of course, that Trump seems to want to end this war not for the sake of Ukraine, but for the sake of his own relationship with Russia. And so Trump might be willing to offer concessions that would go against the Ukrainian and therefore against the European interests. Hence, it's so crucial that the Europeans stick to their guns, literally and figuratively, and continue their position in support of in close consultation with Ukraine.
What would Vladimir Putin have to do or say to get negotiations with Europe present, with Zelensky present, a face-to-face talk that brings the EU to the table? What would he have to do before Europe is ready to take that step?
Well, I think if Putin wants to engage in sincere negotiations directly with Ukraine, I mean, if Ukraine agrees to go to the table, Europe will certainly support that. That's not the issue. The issue is that as long as the war continues, we must make clear that no matter how long it continues, we will never drop Ukraine. And I think that is what Putin also has to understand. He may think time is on his side, but we have now said that Ukraine will be a member of the European Union. Therefore, come what may, Europe will never drop Ukraine. So there is no prospect of complete victory for Russia either. That is what our stance makes clear.
Sven, thank you so much. Sven Biscop from the Royal Institute for International Relations in Brussels.
Cheers.